On this week's episode, why did I receive this letter from Freddie Mac? So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and welcome back your financial coach, George Corbello. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Shawn, for the kind welcome and another great episode. I'm truly trying to understand exactly what this Freddie Mac thing is, but I'm excited to learn something new today.
Yeah, so you didn't get a letter from Freddie Mac, did you?
I think I did, but I think I put it in the spam. I just put it in the trash. I think, but no, yeah.
No, if you got a letter from Freddie Mac, it was probably based on buying that new house, maybe.
There you go. But
how's that going, by the way?
Apparently they have ground. They removed the dumpster off the lot, which is nice. And they're starting the plumbing, the groundwork itself, plumbing, all that good stuff. So
Nice.
very excited about the progress. A little nervous as well as, kind of like constructing the new house. It's the first time for, my family. So we're
Right.
all kind of like, my daughter's already like, hey, this color for this room and this and that. I'm like, girl, let's make sure we get the walls first.
Hold on a minute there. Let's make sure we got a structure and a roof.
Yeah, I was like, let's get plumbing before we worry about what color your room's gonna be. But I'm excited that they're excited, and it's just a lot of stress around the saving for it, getting the right down payment, all that good stuff.
How old's your daughter?
19, and well, the 15-year-old is the one who's planning and plotting.
I mean, she's only going to be in that house, what, another 2 years before she goes to college? 3 years?
Do you know how the economy works? I feel like my kid's going to be there for at least another 30. What are you talking about?
I remember when I came, so I think it was graduating. I was graduating college, going to law school, and my parents had a house built. There was a new development at the time going up in Miami, and so my parents moved out of the house where I grew up and moved to this other house and had it built. And the strange thing was my sister was getting ready to leave to go to college. My parents ended up buying a bigger house.
Yeah,
They didn't downsize. They went from a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom up to a, I think, 5-bedroom,
Nice.
3-bathroom house when my sister and I left.
It kind of tells you something, that we need more space for
Our
ourselves.
stuff. But my sister and I had no input into what they did to that new house.
Nice.
None whatsoever.
I mean, I'm not listening to my kids at this point. Yeah, I'm great on the ideas for colors and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, she's like, oh, hot pink. I'm like, well, we'll revisit that when we get to the house.
We'll take your request under advisement.
It's in the suggestion box
We put it in
near
the
the trash.
We put it in that round suggestion box.
Exactly.
So the Freddie Mac list. We were talking pre-recording, and the Freddie Mac list is something I've talked a lot about. So if anybody wants more information on it, there's a whole bunch of Crushing Debt episodes you can listen to. Episode 32, episode 83, episode 132, episode 179, episode 262, episode 277, episode 306. Don't worry about writing any of those down. I will link all of those when I create the show notes for this file. But let me tell you the story of how this started.
Please.
So I was asked to do a realtor seminar basically on how realtors can avoid liability. So I go onto the great Google and I type in how can realtors avoid liability? And a whole bunch of stuff came up. And so I went and put my presentation together, went out to the realtors, gave my presentation, had a friend of mine video record the entire thing. And then after we recorded it, it was about 75 minets of content.
Right.
And so we took all that and we broke it up into 2 to 4 minute segments, wherever there was a natural break in the content, we separated it out into another segment. And all of those, and then slowly over the course of, 6 months or so, I released all those on YouTube, all those videos.
Yeah.
So if you go back, some of the early video content on the Yesner Law YouTube page is that realtor seminar. You can see a much larger version of me.
It's such younger. I'd say I wouldn't even look at the larger part. I would say the younger part, Mr.
I will tell you that none of those clothes I wore in that video fit me anymore.
Well, that's a good thing.
They're all too big.
Okay.
So meanwhile, one of the segments I did, one of the things that made it into its own video was this Freddie Mac Exclusionary List.
Right.
The issue is if Freddie Mac gets evidence or believes that you are doing something to harm their ability to package a good investment product.
Okay.
They put you on what they call their exclusionary list. Yep. When you're on the exclusionary list, you cannot participate in a transaction where Freddie Mac is a party. Whether you're a mortgage broker, mortgage originator, whether you're a realtor, an appraiser, a title company, an inspector, a buyer, a seller, it doesn't matter. I've had clients that have been on the exclusionary list. They were real estate investors, and they got put on the list. And they went to buy a house personally for themselves to live in, not to invest in. Freddie Mac said, you're on the list. We're not going to loan you money to buy this house.
Wow.
And so they're that strict about it. And so it really doesn't matter what area of law or what area of a real estate transaction you're in. If you're on this list, you can't participate in a closing where Freddie Mac is a party. So we post this video, this 2.5-minute video about the Freddie Mac Exclusionary List. And then I get a call. And I get a call from somebody who says, hey, I was on the list, and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you're not in Florida. There's nothing I can really do to help. So, but why don't you try telling Freddie Mac, blah, blah, blah. I forget what I told him. Whatever I told him. Tell Freddie Mac. They call me back like a month and a half, 2 months later. Hey, thanks. That worked. I'm off the list.
Okay.
Great. A few weeks later, somebody else calls me. Hey, I'm not in Florida, but I'm on the list. Can you help? Well, I told the last person to tell Freddie Mac, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you try this? They call me back a month and a half later. Hey, I'm off the list. Thanks. Great. I get a call from somebody else, and then I thought, wait a minute. This might be something that I could actually charge people for my help in getting them come off the list.
Let's help, right?
The first thing that comes up is, well, wait a minute. A lot of these people on the list are not in Florida. I don't know that that necessarily matters because I am not representing them in any court of law.
Sure.
I'm just writing a letter to Freddie Mac that says, hey, here's all the reasons why this person should come off the list. And so I developed a whole system. I have a retainer letter. I do have a form letter that will help people come off the list, although I customize it to fit the facts because there's different reasons people might go on the list. It might be, like I said, it might be a realtor. It might be a mortgage originator. It might be this. It might be that. And so now I've been helping. I am not, full disclosure, full transparency, I am not 100%. I do not have a 100%.
There's no guarantee
success rate.
Right, in regards to that.
There have been plenty of people that I have applied on behalf of, and Freddie Mac has said, no, we're not taking them off the list. So I'm not 100%, but I am well over 50%. You know, a majority of the people that have come to me, I've been able to help. And there's been a few that I look at their situation and I'm like, dude, I can't help you. I can't help you. And so I won't take their money if I don't think I can help them. Interestingly, most of the people that I cannot help. So the way the process works, Freddie Mac thinks you've done something to harm their investment product.
Right. I mean, so just before you get into that itself, obviously they're committed. It says here, committed to helping the mortgage industry fight fraud. And again, as part of fraud prevention, you know, they've created this list. So that's what they're trying to combat as part of, you know, this process with the creation of this list.
Right.
So the question though is, you know, like, why, you know, what would possess, you know, Freddie Mac to say we think you're going to do something or you've done something that warrants being on that list?
Yeah, it's not we think you're going to do something. It's we've caught you doing
We've done something. Gotcha.
We think you've done something.
Okay.
And so I think the latest one, the last couple of letters, the last couple of clients that I've taken on have been mortgage originators who they get, you know, for certain students, for certain people coming out of school, there's not as much income verification that was required.
Sure.
And so the last couple of mortgage originators that I've worked with to help them come off the list Freddie Mac has accused them of falsifying student records in order to qualify for the loans.
Okay.
So that's the kind of stuff that they've done. I've had other people that have gone on the list for falsifying invoices to Freddie Mac, falsifying appraisal values to Freddie Mac. At least that's what Freddie Mac is accusing them of doing.
That's what they're being accused of.
Right.
Right.
And so for that reason, so typically what happens is Freddie Mac will send someone a letter, and that letter says, hey, here are the loans that we've identified that are a problem because there's been falsified student records.
Right.
There's been falsified invoices. There's been this. There's been that. Here are the list of loans. And typically it's anywhere, I've seen as few as 3 or 4, and I've seen as many as like 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
And here's all the loans. You have 21 days to explain to us why you should not go on the list.
Okay. So they give you a warning at least.
They give you a warning.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. I've never seen a Freddie Mac letter that says you've got 21 days to until you go on the list, and have the person send in some response where Freddie Mac goes, okay, that's acceptable. We're not putting you on the list.
You're not on the list. Gotcha.
In my experience, when that 21-day letter comes out, you're going on the list.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter what you say. And there's, of all the cases that have been unsuccessful, I have a 0% success rate responding to that 21-day letter.
Okay.
It's only been like 3 or 4.
Gotcha.
But none of them I've been able to keep the person from going on the list.
Okay.
So once you're on the list, you can't ask to come off the list for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Once you ask to come off the list, if you are denied, you can't ask again for another year. So if someone goes on the list January 1, 2023, the first time, we can't apply to get them off the list until January 1, 2025.
Oh, wow. That's, yep.
If we send the letter January 2, 2025, and Freddie Mac doesn't respond until March 1 of 2025, and they respond with a no, we can't get that. We can't ask again until March 1 of 2026.
Wow. Okay.
So it's 2 years and then 1 year from every denial. And typically the way that people find out about this, mortgage brokers have access, mortgage originators have access to this list.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Yeah.
So typically realtors
It's not
won't.
Public knowledge itself.
It's not. And in fact, Freddie Mac says it's to be kept confidential.
Okay.
So one of the other issues I run into is, well, wait a minute. I'm on the Freddie Mac list, but now Chase says they won't write a loan. Well, what happens is Chase puts you through the Freddie Mac process. Chase sees that you're on the Freddie Mac list, and Chase says, well, because you're on the Freddie Mac list, we're not going to loan you an FHA. We're not going to loan you a Fannie. We're not going to loan you a conventional.
Oh, so you start.
It's not that Freddie Mac is broadcasting it. It's that once the individual. So if you go to Chase and Chase says you're on the Freddie Mac list, we're not going to loan you money, you may need to go to Wells Fargo.
Right, you need to go to another company
or another bank.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's
Wow.
what we've been. The biggest challenge, the biggest issue that I have with the Freddie Mac list, they don't tell you why.
Right, that's the first question is going to be what did I do?
So they tell you why in the initial letter. Here are the loans that we found. Here are the transactions we found that we don't like.
Okay.
But when I send the letter in that says, hey, we want so-and-so to come off the list, they don't come back and say, we loved your letter. We liked where you argued, blah, blah, blah. And because you argued that, we're taking so-and-so off the list.
Right.
They don't reply and they say, you didn't explain enough about blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So we're not. I get a letter. It's a 1-page letter, like 2 paragraphs long. And sentence number 1 says, thank you for your submission. Sentence number 2 says, so-and-so is off the list effective blah, blah, blah date. Or thank you for your submission. We are not taking so-and-so off the list.
That's it.
That's it.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of what people are paying for when they hire me to help them with their letter, and some of what these other podcast episodes about, I look at the trends. When we've had mortgage originators, how often have we been able to help them come off the list?
Sure.
Does time matter? And a lot of times it doesn't. I've had people that have been on the list 2-3 years. I've had people that have been on the list 15 years.
What?
And everything in between. So time really doesn't matter.
Okay.
But is it, what kind of error was it that got you on the list?
Right.
Are you a mortgage originator? One of the easiest ones I had was a notary that went on the list. And so I sent a letter to Freddie Mac and said, she's a notary.
Right.
She doesn't control the documents. She doesn't supply the documents. She doesn't have any input into entering information in the document. All she does is stamp it and sign it.
Right, exactly.
That's it. Freddie Mac said, yeah, she's off the list.
Okay.
That was the easiest one. The hardest one was a mortgage broker that was falsifying invoices to Freddie Mac. Like,
well, yeah.
Not
Not helping yourself there.
that was kind of the lesson I learned, where there are some that you're just never going to be able to
Right,
help. So
right.
just don't take their money and tell them no thank you.
Gotcha. But I mean, wow, 2 years, 1 year after that. So from an impact perspective, what's the impact to a broker or a realtor who's on this list itself? I mean, can you survive from a business standpoint if you're limited to, who you can work with for this type of work?
Some have. I remember
I mean,
one.
15 years. I mean, geez, I
Yeah.
don't know what you do with that.
I remember one person that I helped come off the list, and they had been doing cash deals. It was a realtor that had been doing cash deals. And what we ended up doing was we said to Freddie Mac, we've been surviving on cash deals, but now with the market shifting, we're kind of in trouble.
Right.
And I had the realtor submit letters from investors, real estate investors, that said, if I can't work with XYZ realtor, I'm not going to buy these properties. If I don't buy these properties, I'm not taking out Freddie Mac loans.
Right.
If I don't buy these properties, I'm not selling them to people that are going to take out Freddie Mac loans.
Gotcha.
Freddie Mac, this person deserves to come off the list, but if you don't take her off the list, you're only hurting yourself, because that's less business you're going to be able to write.
Got to hit him with the business kind of. That makes sense.
That realtor came off the list. I don't know if it was because I said it that way.
Right.
Or I don't know.
What's the letters? What is it?
But
you're right.
I mean, or if it's a mortgage originator who's on the list, you might need to do conventional loans. You might need to do hard money loans. You might need to do, commercial loans.
Yeah.
You just can't do Freddie Mac loans.
Interesting itself. And Freddie Mac loans are focused on what? What are they usually focused on?
Yeah, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are quasi-governmental entities.
Okay.
And they were basically designed to help people buy houses.
Yeah.
People that maybe wouldn't be able to otherwise, people that maybe wouldn't be able to qualify. So you've got like the conventional loans where you got to put down a whole bunch of money and whatever. Then you've got the FHA loans, which are I only need to put down 3.5%. Freddie Mac's kind of
in the between. Gotcha.
in that middle area. It's basically designed to help people buy houses.
Oh my goodness! But so it's amazing. Again, probably someone who is not in that industry itself, but that kind of an impact could have an impact on the bottom, dollar. What these guys are working through, how do they do their job itself, and as well, and again, you had mentioned if Chase, sees you on the list, that might prevent you from dealing with one of the big banks, because what if all the banks did that? Then is it credit unions? So it feels like it's a bigger impact being on that list than anything.
Yeah, it could be a huge impact. And that's so one thing, if I do have somebody that they get that 21-day letter, they go on the list. The interesting thing is, I have, maybe you can help me. I haven't been able to find a really good analogy yet, but I've kind of analogized it to being in jail, being in prison.
Yeah, no, it sounds, especially from a business standpoint, it's like you're under shackles.
Right.
Sure.
Now, there's nothing illegal about being on the list.
Yeah.
This is not a legal versus illegal. It's not like Freddie Mac says you're on the list and we're sending your file to the FBI.
Right.
There may be certain circumstances where they do that if they think you're committing, bank fraud.
Yeah.
But by and large, it's, hey, you're on the list. You're on the list. We're not sending you to the sheriff. We're not sending you to the FBI. We're not. You're just on the list. It's not an illegal thing. But what I've also found is arguing I should not have been on the list is not an effective argument. Arguing I was arrested for this crime. I should not have been arrested. I should, I'm innocent of committing this crime. I don't do a lot of criminal law, but how often is an argument like that successful? And I found the same kind of thing with Freddie Mac. Arguing I shouldn't be on the list is not an effective argument. What I try to do is shift people to say, okay, instead of saying I shouldn't have been on the list, let me talk about all the great stuff I've done since I went on the list.
Right.
That tells you, Freddie Mac, that I won't be on the list again. If you let me off, I won't get back on the list again. Yeah. So things like what kind of education did I take? What kind of continuing education did I take? What kind of recommendation letters can I get
preventative
from others
items,
in the
whatever it
industry?
might be. Yeah. So you made a mistake. You're looking for kind of penance.
Yeah.
On what it is. Again, you could argue, but if you're doing fraudulent transactions itself and are knowing of it, it's you're kind of hurting your own kind of case there too.
And that's where I say, similar to being in jail, I'm not going to argue. If I want parole, is it better to say I didn't commit the crime and stick to that? Or is it better to say I understand about what's going on with this? I understand the crime that I was charged with, and here's all the great stuff I've done since I've been in prison. I've been a model citizen.
Yeah.
I've helped volunteer. I've helped do this. I've helped do that. I've learned my lesson. Therefore, you should let me out of jail on parole.
Makes sense.
It's that same type of an argument.
We're like a parole board just to get off. But I mean, I feel like it's a lot more impactful, especially for your business, as a business person itself. If you're relying on these types of services if they're not available, that just kind of strips you from what you're. So I can see why being in front of the board to help out. But this is not like you're just sending a letter. It's not like, hey, I can go to court or I can go somewhere to kind of plead my case. Because again, nothing gets lost in translation when we're writing letters, right?
No.
Or, like any of those. So I think that's the fear that I always have is like, oh my God, am I going to be able to say the right thing that's going to trigger that person who's reading this? Because again, you don't know who's, I'm assuming you don't know who's reading it. Could be,
I think it's a committee. I think it's a committee.
You would hope.
I don't know how many people.
Right, exactly.
It could be 2, it could be 5, it could be 12.
Is it the admin? You think I maybe could?
I have no idea. I know it's a committee, and it is. So it is a little bit more than a letter. We do, like I said, we've got a form letter. We do customize it for everybody's individual
Is there evidence?
situation.
I guess
we also submit supporting documentation.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not just I got you.
Yeah, if I get letters of recommendation from others in the industry, I'm attaching those letters of recommendation.
Yeah.
I've submitted, company manuals where if the allegation was you didn't properly appraise the property, I submit all the appraisal guidelines that the company uses to appraise properties. I've submitted credit reports. I've submitted bank statements. I've submitted resumes and CVs. I had one realtor client because everything is submitted electronically.
Yeah.
I had one realtor client that we submitted their promotional YouTube video. The video they post on YouTube to get clients.
Right.
We submitted that to Freddie Mac and had Freddie Mac look at that. So you're
proving that you're kind of I'm changed, and we're definitely not going to make these mistakes again.
Right. Gotcha. I had my first boss when we were doing immigration law said, "Does this pass the weight test?" Well, what do you mean the weight test? I mean, is it a thick enough package to the INS?
There you go.
And that's kind of the approach I take with Freddie Mac. How much are we submitting? What's the volume of stuff that we're submitting here? And the more, the better. I mean, Freddie Mac wants to look at it, great. If they don't want to look at it,
great as well.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And we make the argument. Here's why this. I do argue a little bit. We shouldn't have gone on the list because, but that's maybe a paragraph of this entire 3-page letter.
You're not going on a rant,
right? To
be able to kind of like it was your fault, or obviously never point the finger as well. Just take the responsibility, be accountable,
right?
Look and plead your case.
So that's why if someone gets that 21-day letter, well, within the next 2 years, do things to counter the reason that you went on the letter. If someone declines in the next year, do stuff within the next year, and that's why I think those 21-day letters are not successful because Freddie Mac doesn't want you to argue I should not have gone on the list. Freddie Mac wants you to argue here's why I know. And you can't do that.
It's accountability, yeah.
You can't do that in 21 days.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, this is federal or state? This is federal.
Well, Freddie Mac.
Freddie Mac.
I don't know that it's federal versus state, but yeah, Freddie Mac is all over the country.
Right. So they're their own business itself. So I'd imagine they won't be able to process so many reviews within a 21-day period itself. So that I'd imagine that's another reason why it's like when you're receiving that letter, there's no way to be able to react, get on their radar, and be able to do something successfully to get off the list itself by 21 days.
I assume if it was a clear...
Is that business days as well?
I assume if it was a clear issue that caused someone to go on the list, they could potentially argue within that 21 days.
Right.
But if Freddie Mac says, here are the 7 loans where you falsified documents, how am I going to show in 21 days? I've learned why that's wrong, and,
Right,
and I'm not going to do it again. How do I prove that in 21 days?
Interesting. I gotta say that's got to be stressful though if you've received that letter itself, and still trying to kind of manage your business or manage what you're doing. But again, to be honest with you, if you've falsified information or anything like that,
Maybe you deserve to be on the list.
There's probably a reason why you got on that list.
I've had people that have gone on the list as one thing, switched to something else in real estate, and that list is still interfering. So somebody that went on as a mortgage originator who then said, well, if I can't originate mortgages, I'm going to be a realtor.
Yep.
Then they go in as a realtor, and the mortgage lender says, you're on the list. You can't be a realtor on this transaction.
You can't be a listed. Oh, man, that's
So I've had that happen before, too.
Well, I'll become a mechanic then if it becomes a... Oh, my goodness. Well, I got to say, I learned a lot in regards to the list, getting on the list, or why I'm getting on the list, why I'm getting off the list itself. Obviously, contact Shawn. He's got the magic pill. No guaranteed on that itself, but I think the attitude here is accountability and just keeping that in mind when it comes to like, all right, I'm on this situation. How can I make sure I learn from it, and obviously then plead your case in regards to why you've changed from that? Makes sense.
It's not rocket science. People can do it. When they hire me to do it, really what they're paying for is my experience of saying,
what do I need to say?
This tactic seems to work. This tactic seems not to work. And, all from a 2.5 minute video that I kind of threw
Your curiosity
away.
On the subject.
Yeah, 2.5 minutes.
Has you ranked number 2 on the when you're finding the subject itself. So
it is kind of cool if you search it on Google. I'm typically on the first page.
There you go.
Right below Freddie Mac.
I looked it up too, and I was like, well, there you go. How do I get off the list?
Organically.
Shawn Yesner right there, number 1.
And doing podcast episodes like this doesn't hurt the ranking either.
That's kind of the idea too. So we're working that angle as well.
We're working that angle.
I like it.
So if you have questions about the Freddie Mac list, give me a buzz. If you find yourself on the Freddie Mac list, give me a buzz. Shoot me an email. We can set up a free consultation. I can take a look at why you're on the list. I can suggest ways to come off the list. Right. I'm not going to make you any promises, but I don't really track my success rate for 2 reasons. Number one, the Florida bar doesn't like you to create an impression in the mind of a potential client. So I can't make a promise that, if I'm 75% successful, but you happen to be in the 25%, that could get me in trouble.
Right.
So that's the main reason I don't track it. I know that I am more successful than not. I know that I'm
good enough for me.
At least better than 50%. I don't know.
So you don't suck at this. That's what I'm saying. Okay, great.
Yeah, I have helped people come off the list.
That's all that counts.
So, meanwhile, let me talk real quick. I know we've got our longtime editor, Mark Purvis. He's one of the sponsors of the show. He's got a website called LegacySpotlight.com. So if you want to tell a story about how you got on the list and how you came off the list, you can talk all about that. Maybe that could be an issue. Somebody record a video with Mark about, I apologize, and here's how I'm going to stay off the list.
There you go.
It might be a way to come off the list.
Nice. Hey, again, you got to plead your case.
There you go.
There's one way to do it.
LegacySpotlight.com. Mark is an Emmy award-winning videographer. Also, we've got the Patreon page. Anything we make on Patreon gets dumped back into the show to make it better for all of you.
Yes.
All of our social media channels. Again, you can find all those old Fat Shawn videos on YouTube talking about the Freddie Mac list and all the other stuff I talked about in that Realtor seminar. Plus, you can find newer, skinnier Shawn videos on the Yesner Law YouTube page.
There you go.
Their Cabello Financial page, TikTok page, all their social medias.
Yep, definitely learn more about the mindset needed for budgeting and just managing your money one day at a time. That's what we're here to do.
There you go. So I think that'll do it for this week's episode.
I'm all learned out. I'm good. I'm good right here.
I'm all explained out. So we look forward to talking to you in next week's episode, and we hope that at the end of the month you have more money rather than at the end of the money you have more month. And that'll do it for this week's episode, and we look forward to talking to you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast.